What theory, phenomenon, or idea blows your mind when you think about it? Story 1, just to quote Randall Munroe, a bit on supernovas. However big you think supernovae are, they're bigger than that. Here's a question to give you a sense of scale. Which of the following would be brighter in terms of the amount of energy delivered to your retina? A supernova, seen from as far away as the sun is from the Earth, or the detonation of a hydrogen bomb pressed against your eyeball. Applying the physicist's rule of thumb suggests that the supernova is brighter, and indeed it is, by 9 orders of magnitude. Story 2. Can we just talk about language in its entirety? Especially written language. Right now, you are looking at nothing but strange connections and spacing of random lines. Within these lines, however, you are able to understand, process, and interpret a complex idea about how strange it is that these symbols can be used to describe any idea at all, let alone something as complicated as the sciences or philosophy. But not only that, but by changing just one symbol, I can change the idea. To see what I mean, the difference between "you love me" and "you love me" is astounding. The different scenario running through your mind when you read each of those symbols is completely different, entire stories and thoughts dictated by a squiggle. I am currently studying Arabic. I am a native English speaker, and simply learning a different alphabet is mind-blowing. A few months ago, I looked at Arabic writing and just saw chaos and meaningless lines and dots. Now I look at it and see words and ideas. Nothing actually changed though. It's freaky. Story 3. When I think of phenomena, I always think of the Carrington event. The planet saw a solar flare of historic size in the 1800s. Astronomer Richard Carrington first saw and investigated it, and it was a huge solar flare known as a coronal mass ejection, CME. The CME hit the world with what was practically a galactic electromagnetic pulse, which completely flattened the magnetosphere and stopped the Earth's natural electromagnetic shielding from working until it was over. Fortunately, the electrical infrastructure on Earth was still new at the time. However, the incident did cause telegraph cables to melt and telegraph machines to catch fire. Then, in 2012, a CME that was as strong as or stronger than the Carrington event was seen. It went right through the Earth's orbit, as we were on the other side of the sun. Think about how important our electronic infrastructure has grown in our daily lives. What if we had been in the splash zone of something like that? If servers broke and burned, Reddit and the internet would stop working right away. If life support techniques can't be done by hand or with analog technology, everyone on a life support machine would die. Satellites that help people talk to each other, predict the weather, do scientific research, and use GPS systems would be destroyed so badly that they would be useless space debris. It would be a disaster of biblical proportions. And it was so close to happening. The sun spins around its axis about once every 3 weeks. So whether the CME happened 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after it did, well, the world would change in a big way all of a sudden. Story 4. It's not really a phenomena, but I do think it is. It's the thought that scares me every day and hits me in the face every time I wake up. There are more than 7 billion people in the world, living their life. Everyone has their own world. A life full of friends, enemies, good things and bad things. There are hundreds of millions of places where humans live. Memories of homes, and everyone has a story to tell, a goal to reach, and a place to go. Everyone has a tale to tell about themselves. It's just incredible. Totally mind-blowing. Story 5. How much labor do we all put into everything around us? Get a book. It wasn't just the author who was responsible for it being in your hand, the owner of the publishing business, the factory worker who made sure it was printed correctly, and many others were too. Look at a building. From the architect who came up with the idea, to the contractor who built it, to the construction worker who put in the effort and sweat to make those walls. An apple that you might eat as a snack goes through a lot of people, such the farmer, the distributor, and the store that put it on the shelf. There were a lot of people working on almost everything around us, even folks you don't think about. I think that's really cool. Story 6. What is outside of the universe? What does the universe exist in? How did the universe come to be? How can anything be? What does that thing exist in if it exists in something? What the hell happened before the Big Bang? What was the cosmos like before that? What caused the Big Bang? Seeing things like this gets me a little uncomfortable sometimes because it shows how crazy reality is. The rules of physics can explain everything else. But how do you explain the laws of physics and reality itself? I just can't take not being able to understand. It's best not to think about it too much. Story 7. The Library of Babel is A huge library that has all the possible 410-page books of a certain format and character set. In short, it has all the many ways that a certain alphabet can be used on a specified amount of pages. Most books are going to be nonsense, but there is also your full biography and every possible variation of your life. Hamlet is also the same as the original, except there is an error on page 23, and a different Hamlet with a mistake on page 22, and so on. There is a cure for cancer, a single theory of physics, and an answer to every question you might have. The only problem is that you wouldn't know where to start if you found a library like that. It has about 251,312,000 volumes in it, and every book in the library makes sense, because for every book that doesn't make sense, there is another book that does. For example, there is a book that is a perfect Rot 13 of your life story, and another that explains Rot 13. An index of the library's contents would be the most valuable book, therefore it must exist. Story 8. That scale never stops and is always there. There is a scale that exists right now, and from that viewpoint, a crumb next to you is the size of Mount Everest, like a huge mountain-like thing that shuts out light for miles at that scale, and has extensive valleys, ridges, and cliffs. The viewpoint still exists, even if there is nothing there to see. And there is also a scale that exists right now, from which the identical crumb looks like a planet, the sun, a system of planets around a star. Yes, quarks are the smallest things we know of, but that doesn't mean there isn't a point of view or scale from which quarks aren't big. And the reality that that point of view or scale goes on forever, it will never stop getting smaller or bigger. Just thinking about it makes you feel like you're falling into it. There are stars that make us look like nothing and dust that makes us look like stars. It goes on forever in both directions, and we simply happen to be at this point. And at any given moment or place, everything must appear great. Story 9. I like to think about all the people who have stood where I am now in the past. There are undoubtedly millions of people who have stood where I am, in front of the Eiffel Tower. We all stood in the same area, yet those folks had different experiences, thoughts, attitudes, and values. Then you think about how the person who stood where I am now might have fought in World War II or raised their kids in a house that used to be where my flat is now. Those folks would never have known I was there, although we were in the same place. Story 10. We are always worried about this vague other. We are always locked in roles that we will always play, and even though it's not always the same part, we never stop playing any of them. That vague and ambiguous other lets us stay in our roles when no one is present. Have you ever thought about why we look around before we pick our nose or pull up our pants in public? Even if no one is normally observing you all the time, you still worry that someone might notice. That's because we need other people to approve and disapprove of what we do to help us play our roles and do our jobs. For example, think of someone who follows a certain faith. They often decide what to do based on whether or not their religion or God would be okay with it. This person is being a good, insert religion here, and doing their job while retaining that image. You have to consider how much of what you do is genuinely for you, and not for an audience that may or may not be there. Story 11. Sonder. The realization that every random person you see on the street is living a life as full and complicated as your own, with their own goals, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. It's like an anthill that stretches deep underground, with complicated passageways to thousands of other lives that you will never know existed. You might only appear once as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, or as a lighted window at dusk. Story 12. The pyramids of Egypt weren't built for another 8,000 years after Göbekli Tepe was built. The figurine Venus von Millendorf comes from around 28,000 BC, so for the person who had it, our life or reality was 30,000 years in the future. Do a small mental exercise and attempt to picture what life will be like in 30,000 years. There is so much that has happened in the past, but it's hard to picture what will happen in 100 years, let alone 1,000. That we have such a long history, with time periods that are simply unthinkable if we use the same time frame for the future. For example, there are probably more secrets in our past than in any future we might imagine. Story 13. The double-slit experiment. And perhaps more crucially, the experiment that proved it didn't matter if the wave went through the slit and was seen between the slits and the detection screen. It seems like the wave knew it would be seen before it was sent out, therefore it acted like a particle. This and entanglement seem to back up the idea that the cosmos is deterministic and that people don't have free will. But the many worlds theory lets this happen while still keeping free will. Is free will a fake thing? Please do some research and decide for yourself. First of all, the double slit experiment is really hard to understand. It seems that conscious perception changes reality, since just watching which slit a particle goes through reduces the wave function, changing a probability cloud into a single event. But even that interpretation is up for controversy. Some people claim that it's not consciousness itself that creates decoherence, but any relationship that does. Still, that it knows it's being watched vibe is inescapably frightening. Story 14, to be honest, magnetism. It's such a simple, basic physical property of some types of matter that we use it to hold up bills, reminders, and our kids' drawings on the fridge. But the same basic force is now pulling a real constant death ray away from the Earth's surface and spreading it into pretty lights we can see near the poles. We can just connect two magnetic things together without any glue or rivets. If their fields are strong enough, it can be quite hard to pull them apart. Planets begin to develop out of an accretion disk when a new star is born. This happens on a microscopic level through magnetic attraction. The whole cosmos is always exchanging electromagnetic waves, and practically everything in life depends on it, and I can use it to hang my kids' drawings on the fridge. Whoa, story 15. Also, the thought that free will probably doesn't exist. Just think about it. There's an apple on your table. Do you grab it? Are you going to leave it? Do you get rid of it? You pick it up because you enjoy apples. But what do you enjoy about apples? You probably got used to the flavor when you were younger and had enough of them to keep liking them. What if you never got an apple? Or what if you choked on an apple when you were a kid and now they make you feel bad without you even knowing it? And if something as minor as choking on a slice of an apple as a youngster may affect your decision. Now, what other small things in life have helped you make decisions? And how many little things have you done to other people that altered their minds on something in the future? All of your choices are founded on things that have happened before. Does it mean you're just along for the ride if all you do is make small modifications to your thinking all the time? And if you put two identical clones in vacant rooms from birth and watch them, would they do the same thing? Could the hue of the room change one of the clones into a completely different person? Story 16. If you weren't told about the color blue and seen it as a child, you probably wouldn't be able to see it at all, even though you have that ability. After carefully studying written books from different civilizations, it has been suggested that people may not have been able to perceive the color blue until the Odyssey was written, even though they had been able to view it for more than 10,000 years. Blue is the final color to get a name in almost every language known to man. I can't say all languages for sure, and it's also the rarest color in nature. This is another evidence of how powerful the human brain is, even if it's just partly true. Oh, I don't know what to call this color, so I guess I'll just disregard it completely when I get those wavelengths and show you a different color instead. Story 17. My favorite fact about space. Voicanis Majoris is one of the biggest stars we know of. Its radius is bigger than Jupiter's orbit. If you put Voicanis Majoris in place of the Sun, Earth would be closer to the star's center than its surface. Its surface would get quite close to the midway point between the orbits of Saturn and Jupiter. You know that old school lesson where they say that if the Sun was a golf ball, the Earth would be a grain of sand on the other side of the room or something? The objective is to show how much of the solar system is empty space. This gigantic bright thing fills up all that empty space with stars. It is called a red hypergiant, a freaking hypergiant, when the huge doesn't cover it and the supergiant still isn't big enough. Story 18. Noise. When you stand on stage and talk into a microphone, your voice goes into a microphone, magnets, and metal. The microphone turns sound waves into some kind of energy that travels down a cable to an amplifier, which pushes your voice through machinery and down another cable to a speaker. Then, through more magnets, metal, and other materials, this speaker somehow turns your voice back into sound waves and sends it out in the same way you spoke. Also, that microphone doesn't travel right to a speaker. 99 times out of 100, it goes to an audio board first and then follows the path I just described. This audio board can change your voice in practically any way you can think of, including EQing, compressing, reverberating, delaying, limiting, or adding effects. In a split second, all over hundreds or even thousands of feet of cable. It seems like your voice makes all those hundreds of feet of travel and changes happen faster than you can blink. How in TF? Or what about a record? When a band plays, all of the vocals, instruments, and effects are combined into one sound wave, which is then turned into a record, a thing you can touch and see. And somehow the record produces noise as you roll the needle over it. I think audio and technology are weird. Story 19, Life and Awareness. We begin with one cell that divides over and over again until it becomes a baby that grows slowly. How we become aware of our own existence at a given age, like a camera that records sights, sounds, feelings, sensations, and odors all day long. What does it mean to know that we exist? What does it do? What makes it start at a given point in development? What is it? Can it be done again? Is it possible to take it out and put it in another body? What is the connection between life and consciousness? You can be living and not aware of it, but you can't be dead and aware of it. You don't have that consciousness anymore after you die. You, whatever you is, no longer exist. Your body will merely rot, and that little spark, that thing that made you know you were alive, is gone and won't come back. You don't even know you're dead, since you don't know whether you're still alive as soon as you pass out. When you pass out, you stop existing to yourself. What about persons who are clinically dead for a short period, like seconds or minutes, and then come back to life? Where does that consciousness go when they're out? How does it get back? Is it like a part of the brain that stopped operating for some reason, such not getting enough oxygen or the heart stopping for too long, and then it just gets powered back up and reboots when the paramedic brings you back? Story 20. I'm pushing buttons that close electrical circuits that go into a signal processor. This processor sends a complicated square wave pattern over a piece of flexible metal that connects to another signal processor to make another signal on a network of transistors. This signal eventually changes the color of pixels on a monitor because of a completely physical chain reaction. Then I'll move a machine with an optical scanner in the base to make other pixels change to move a cursor to a button. When I close a different switch on that handheld scanning device, the machine this is all connected to will send an electrical signal over a different wire that goes to another machine that sends a signal to another machine that, well, eventually, because I press keys on my keyboard, a chain reaction that is 100% physical, completely unavoidable, and mathematically foreseeable affects the pixels on your monitor. Story 21. There are areas on Earth where billions of people have been, but in the same place, like Los Angeles, there is a tiny point or corner where no one has ever touched or will touch, or that there are whole parts of the Earth that have never been touched or seen by anyone, and we can't walk on or touch every single square inch of land in the world. I don't know if this makes sense to anyone else, but it does to me. I think about this a lot too. When I'm hunting or whatever in the woods, I think to myself, that step I just took has probably never had another person step in this spot. Or when you see an insect, like that awful fly in the car when I'm driving alone, I'm probably the only person who will ever see that insect. Story 22, the moon's role in the evolution of life on Earth is what really blows my mind. Without the moon, the Earth would wobble on its axis, making various regions of the planet point toward the sun and others point away from it. Florida is a tropical paradise for 50 years, and then it turns into a polar ice cap. We also wouldn't have tides, which are thought to have sped up the growth of life. So when you think about how unlikely it is that there is another planet in our galaxy with liquid water, an atmosphere, a magnetic field, and a big moon to keep its orbit and spin stable, it starts to seem like we might be the only ones in our galaxy. There are 100 billion stars in the Milky Way, and possibly 10 times as many planets. What are the chances that all the proper conditions happen twice? Story 23. I got this concept from movies where people go back in time and attempt not to kill anyone or influence the future. But every little thing, even a leaf falling, transforms the world. If the leaf falls 5 seconds later, it will be in the way of a random ant. This will slow the ant down and keep it from being eaten by a bird. This will make the bird seek for its food longer, and it won't poop exactly where you can see it and alter your mind. And so on the chain goes. Every action you take influences the world in a big way. I know my English isn't perfect, but I hope you get the point. Story 24. It's a little late, but all of these things have made me want to write about how my interest in perception is expanding. You never genuinely imagine that someone else views the same thing in a different way, even if the difference is small or big. For example, we can both agree that the shirt is blue, but is the blue shirt exactly the same as what you see? Think about that with everything you do or see. It's clear that perception is only relative to you. Your reality will be different from someone else's. This is why some individuals go crazy over a small cut, and others stay calm and collected with a fractured bone. The pain is relative to how you see it. I don't know if this can be described by anything, but if we knew a lot about how people and other objects see things, we would be much closer to understanding our brains, and maybe even closer to explaining things we don't know much about. Story 25. I'm not Joe Bloggs experiencing the cosmos. The universe is experiencing Joe Bloggs. This is what I tell myself to realize how stupid my ego is. Vanity is the worst thing about people. It's out of control. We need to understand that consciousness is like a radio signal, and we are the radios. Our current perception of ourselves is like believing that the radio show is literally inside your radio. Buddhists would say that when we identify with the radio instead of the show, we are mixing up the roadmap with the goal. I believe this is the fundamental reason we are all in such a bad place right now. We need to stop being selfish and start caring for each other. We need to fully grasp and feel compassion for each other, since we are all one. The modern look out for number one attitude is the antithesis of what will make us happy.